Whoa. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. In today's video, we are going to be attempting to make something out of nothing. I'm going to take this butchered up $10 yard sale find and see if I can make two functional pieces of furniture out of it. Can I do it? I believe so, but there's only one way to find out. So this old broken up bourbon barrel, picked it up at a yard sale a couple years back for like 10 bucks. And like a lot of my treasures that I've found, this thing kind of found its way to the one day pile. You know, where I'll kind of get to it one day or I could use it one day. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has one of those places. As a lot of you know, we've recently had some major issues with our home where we're pretty much going to have to tear most of it down and start from scratch. In the meantime, we have renovated our garage and our family of 6 is getting to know each other very well. And that's where this idea came from. 2 of my kids are needing side tables for their smaller rooms. So today's challenge is going to be turning this into side tables. All right, so I know that you guys have probably seen some furniture out there built out of old bourbon barrel staves, things like that. So there's going to be a couple different challenges that I'm going to have to try to figure out as we go. One of the things is I need these to be smaller. So it's not just like I can cut the top off and just, use that as a table. We're actually going to be doing maybe something like a half moon shape. Maybe I can use some of these staves as the legs. Another issue that we may run into is this thing could completely fall apart. There's only 2 things left holding this thing together. And that's this top ring and the bottom ring. Whoever had this barrel before, I know what they were going for. They were going to try to cut out this middle section and kind of make like a shelf out of it. What they didn't take into consideration is how bourbon barrels are built. There are no screws or fasteners in this thing. The entire barrel is built by integrating the shape of the staves and these compression rings. So that means that if you create a weak point in one area without any supports, it's all going to fall apart. And that's exactly where we're at with this one. So the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of come up with the design that I want and then see what I'm going to have to do to achieve that. Now another thing is I only have one barrel top that's any good. The bottom of this thing is in pretty rough shape. It's almost rotted out. So I only have one chance to do things right with this barrel top. And once I take all of this apart, that barrel top's going to want to come apart as well. So wish me luck and we'll see how all this turns out. All right, so the first thing I'm going to need to do is just see what I'm working with here. I know that there's some squares missing, things like that. I honestly don't think that I'm going to be needing those. If you remove just one piece of this thing, it leads to failure. It's kind of cool how all of this is designed just to be held together with pressure and wood expansion, but really doesn't help me in this exact situation. The bottom ring, top ring, that's what's kind of holding this together right now. And the reason why that these rings are super loose right now is typically whenever you see an old barrel or something like that, it's had bourbon in it. So the bourbon has actually caused this white oak to expand. Well, everything is just super pressurized and actually watertight or bourbon tight. Once you set these things out in the sun, like as decoration or just storage, however, then they start to dry out, the wood starts to shrink back, and our bands start to loosen up, and everything starts to loosen up. So again, that's kind of where we're at right now. So I was thinking of a couple of different ways to do this. I can try to find the missing staves that came from right here, put those back into place, maybe put this band into place, fasten all of this down, and cut it off right below this band. And that would give us about 5 inches of metal or wood. The other option would be take this band off, leave it like this. I'm going to have to take all of this apart just to get to the top. But yeah, you can see where they started cutting these side pieces out here, and then all of a sudden everything loosened up on them. And I think they just abandoned the project. So again, if we do it this way, it'll just be kind of like the band thickness, and then we'll have maybe 2 or 3 staves, just kind of giving it a less chunky look. And since I'm essentially going to be making 2 out of this one top, I think that I need to keep this top band and this bottom band, because I would like for both of these tables to have this connection point. So these are just like little rivets that are put in here, and they're pretty cool. So I'll make sure that each one has one of those. And ideally, I'd like to clean this metal up a bit and kind of make it like a brushed look. But we'll see. With projects like this, design change can happen at any time out of necessity. So you have to keep an open mind with everything. All right, so to help me decide on, the look that I want, I'm actually going to try to take out a couple more of these staves just to see how it would look if maybe we had 3 legs, you know, 2 on each side and 1 in the middle. Then we'd have to make some type of support for the bottom. Give us some more room. Let me see if I can get one of these out without the whole thing falling apart. It has a little lip that hooks to the barrel top. See what I'm talking about? You just take out one piece of the puzzle here. If I was to take this off, all of these are just going to kind of fold out. Okay, so without taking all of these apart, I'm just going to pull these back just to give me an idea of what the 3 leg concept would look like with kind of a thin top. Since they're only going to be about 2 foot tall, actually it doesn't look bad at all because these are going to be thin. We want to get away from this extra thickness. If we have enough room to leave this entire thing as a top, then we could definitely go with the 5 inches. Since we don't, we'll just go with this band that's a couple inches wide and the top. But I want to keep the wood. So now that we've figured out the look that we're going for, it gives us an idea on how we would disassemble this thing. So my next step right now is taking this lid off and getting it glued together. Like I told you earlier, as soon as we relieve this pressure, it's also going to be relieving the pressure of this top. And it's going to want to fall apart. As you can see here, it's already starting to do that. So I'm just going to stick my arm under this thing, take this band off, and we'll slowly take it out. And that's what I'm talking about. Remember how I said all these would kind of splay open here, fall back? There's pretty much nothing holding these into place except for the bottom band pushing in on the edge of that top. So let's go ahead and take this top and get it glued up. Okay, so I'm already going to change things up just a hair. Before I actually glue this together, I'm going to clean this up a little bit, especially on the inside. For those of you that know a little bit about bourbon, you know that the inside of the entire barrel is charred. So that includes the top. And it looks something like this. And earlier I said that there weren't any fasteners used in making these barrels. Well, I was wrong. Actually, the barrel tops use dowels to hold it into place, but there's not any glue or anything like that used. But it's crazy some of these cuts that they use, like this, to make their tops and their staves. You'll notice on the staves, some of them are only about 1 inch wide, whereas others may be 4 inches wide. But the one constant that there will always be on a bourbon barrel is that it's going to be made out of white oak. So I'm just going to take a sander, remove some of the char from the inside of this barrel top, then I'll flip it over and lightly clean up the top. A little fact about me that a lot of people do not know is that I love bourbon. Being from Kentucky, you see a lot of people with a clear substance in a mason jar, but I'm a bourbon fan. It was actually a big part of our family business whenever we were into flooring manufacturing. We'd dismantle these old bourbon rick houses, then remill and resaw the wood into hardwood flooring. If you'll remember a few videos back, I talked about how I can't handle paint, stains, or really anything without getting it all over me. Well, the same thing goes for char, grease, dirt, really whatever. I've worked with mechanics that can go all day and leave looking the exact same way that they came in, but for me, by the end of the day, it looks like that I just crawled out of the coal mines. I don't know what it is, but don't be surprised when you see this stuff all over me. Okay, so this is one of my favorite parts whenever it comes to dealing with old wood of any kind, is seeing what's hiding underneath of all this old wear and tear. I did notice something though whenever I was sanding these charred bottoms, is it's gorgeous. Look at that color. Like I'm visualizing it with a finish on there and look pretty awesome. But let's get these tops cleaned up and we may be making some changes on which side we'll be using. Okay, so this is what I was talking about this being my favorite part and you really never know what's underneath. Look at the grain configuration of this piece of oak. I'm just going to spritz a little water on it. See what it would look like with the finish. That is gorgeous. You'd actually have to pay big bucks to get this type of configuration. Sadly, since all of this is coming from different pieces of wood, we're not going to have it in all of it. But we'll see how it all turns out. All right, so we have everything sanded up. This is one side. This is the charcoal side. Before I actually glue this up together, like I said earlier, I'm going to be making 2 different side tables out of this. So instead of gluing this and then trying to cut it down after it's already, glued into a circle, I'm going to go ahead and measure this out, cut it down to where it needs to be. That way that both of them are equal. So Seems like it would be a lot easier this way. So I'm going to rip this piece down real quick and we'll get these glued up. Since this board is not completely square, we're actually at 3 1/4 at the bottom and 4 1/4 at the top. I'm only needing to remove about 1/2 of an inch. I'm going to be running my thinner side against my fence, which we typically do not do. But in order to keep everything the way that it needs to be, that's the way I'm going to have to do it. And the best part about cutting old barrel parts, it smells like bourbon. So now with our 2 parts cut in half, let's go ahead and glue these babies together. First thing I'm going to do is cut the excess dowels off of 1/2 and then just slide them into the other. Even though I'm not gluing these 2 parts together, I'm just going to put them together for my glue up. So while we're waiting for this to dry, let's head on back to our barrel. What we're going to be looking for is the parts for the legs. So since I want these stands to be right around 2 foot tall, we're going to be needing, I'm guessing, around 5 of these staves per stand. But we really need these things to be around the same width because some of these are going to be connecting. Let's start taking this thing apart and see what we can find. Now, as you can see, they come in all different sizes. So let's see if we can find some that match. I'm just going to take this whole thing apart, lay these staves out side by side, and see what we have. Whoa. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Little cut off pieces from the last person. These would actually make some pretty good coasters. Bottom ring. And this is the one that I'm wanting to keep. I'm going to set this to the side, and this is the bottom. You see where it's been sitting on the ground? It's pretty roached out, but it is oak, so that may be a possibility for use. We'll see. I doubt it, but we'll see. All right, so this is what I'm working with. Some of these are already a little bit shorter, just where they've been cut, but they at least need to be 24 inches. So all of these are, so they're all contenders. This one looks about right. This group, this has a cut right in the middle. Yeah, we're not going to be able to use that, at least not for the legs. We may be able to use it for a crossbar. These are wide. I really don't want the super wide ones. So one of these are going to be kind of a 2.5 inch, 2 3/4, and then one of these are going to have to be more of a narrow. So those 3 will work. I think that'll do it. I think 5 will probably do it, but we will find out. Got our parts, maybe. Let's cut some leg assemblies. Okay, so I'm going to start off just by cutting my 3 legs. So kind of the idea that I have is 2 legs on the side and then 1 coming from the front. Once we get that, then we can figure out a way to brace this from the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and cut 6 of these down to 24 inches long. Now, since the sides of every one of these staves are at an angle, as well as the ends, to offset this so that it's going to sit flat, I'll put a 5-degree angle on each one of the staves that I'm using for my legs. And as you can see how the material is actually bowed off the fence, I just want to make sure that the section that I'm cutting is flat against the fence. I'll do the same thing for the next set of legs. Once we have all these cut to length, let's go ahead and clean up all of our parts a bit. And we're going to clean these up the exact same way that we did our others. And since I'm really not for sure on how we're going to design the bottom section, I'm just going to clean up the entire stave for each one of these. And again, this is one of my favorite parts because you never know what's going to be underneath of this dirt and grime. Plus you have the freedom to create the look. So you can take this material all the way down to the white oak look, or you can leave some of the distressing. Completely up to you. I have all my legs cut, my parts sanded. I'm getting pretty dirty here. My tops, they are all glued up and dry, but this is kind of what I'm talking about. So I want this to be able to sit against the wall, and then I'm kind of picturing a leg that's going to attach something like this. We'll do this on both sides. I'm going to try to incorporate this ring and see what we can come up with. Again, we still need to design some way to stabilize the bottom of this. but I think we can figure that out. Something else that I'm going to do to these tops, really do not have to, because I think this is going to turn out looking pretty awesome just the way that it is. But I'm going to use the laser and actually put a design in this. The boys are both big outdoorsmen, so I'm going to burn some vintage looking ducks into this. I've actually already done one, and I think it turned out pretty cool. I may end up putting a little something here, not for sure yet, but just kind of adds to the look. Again, you could do this project and it would turn out awesome without lasering anything into it. I'm going to go ahead and get this one started while we're working on our legs. All right, see how she goes. All right, so we'll check on this here in a bit. Back to the legs. Okay, so my back two legs, they're actually going to fit in just the way that they did whenever the barrel was together. So it's going to kind of nest into this little notch that's still there. And since this is going to be made to sit flush against a wall, I'm just going to lay all of this out on a flat surface. Then our top leg, thinking we do something like that, and our support structure for underneath. So since we know that this is how we want to assemble this, what I'm going to do is to use these notches as a guide, actually pre-drill through here, then I'll countersink from this side. Ultimately, it's not going to matter on this side because it's all going to be covered up with this band, hypothetically. At least it works in my head. Well, that's not good. Started with a bit, and I ended without a bit. It's white oak. It happens. It's good times. It's all that you can do is just laugh. So after my bit exchange, I went ahead and pre-drilled and counterbored the rest of my legs. This project's moving along pretty quick, and I'm not gonna lie. Barrel staves are not the easiest material to work with. Just all these funky angles and shapes that you have to combine. But you know how it is. If we have a problem, we'll work it. Okay, so speaking of working the problem whenever we run into it, ironically, as if fate would have it, I actually created that problem whenever I cut these legs because I cut the angles backwards. This little 5-degree angle that I put on the bottom, yeah, they're going the opposite direction. Good thing is I found it pretty quick, so I'll just reverse that cut, put these back together. And now that we have that little issue resolved, I'm going to go ahead and install this center leg. This thing is looking pretty cool. A little bit of spacing here, which we'll do with our base assembly. But all in all, it's pretty awesome. I think I just heard the laser kick off, so let's go check on that. So check that out. Yeah, I think they're really going to dig it. And if they don't, they'll get over it. Okay, so now for our bottom assembly here, it's going to kind of help hold all this stuff together. As you see, this right leg here actually wants to kick in a little bit more. So in order to stabilize all of this, I'm just going to use a bar clamp to spread these out. And then once I get that, I'll redo it. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do for this is to add this leg support. And we're pretty much going to have to cut these things this size. Again, with all of these angles going everywhere, yeah, could be interesting. Because even the piece that we're going to be putting in, it's a lot thicker here in the center, just the way that the barrel is designed, than it is on each end. So in order to get this to line up relatively close, I'm probably going to just have to center this board up, make my marks where it starts to arch in a little bit, and then make my cuts based off of that. I'm going to say that this is about where I'm going to want the height of these supports. But I'm going to make a mark here and one on this side. And then whenever I make these cuts, these legs are arching in, and since everything else is right around a 5-degree angle, I'm going to assume that that is as well. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these at 5 degrees. We'll see if it works. 5 degrees is going to be pretty close. Okay, so I've already messed up this piece by trying to find this right angle. The problem is this is all arched in. So the entire inside of this barrel is arched. These are all at different angles. So it's going to be almost impossible to cut a straight angle for something that is arched in. So what I'm thinking about doing is getting another piece, setting this leg on top, tracing that out, cutting it with a jigsaw, then put it across, mark where I want it to be, then trace the bottom of this leg out. I think we'll get a lot better fit like that. One way to find out. All right, so luckily we have some extra staves. Had to use a little wider piece, which I'm going to be cutting the back of this down anyway to fit. Let's put this on top. It's kind of hard with this arch. I'm going to cut this right here. All right, so I'm going to make this cut, and I'll come back and make this second one. As you can tell by this line here, you can actually see the arch of the wood. And much better. Okay, so it's following the contour of the inside of the barrel. I went ahead and cut this down to the length while I was at it. So that's the 4-inch mark there. Make my mark here. So I know where I want it to be. Then this is the inside. I'm just going to set this leg right on top, just like I did the other one. Make this cut, and we will see. Fingers crossed. Just going to rip a little bit of this off, and then we're ready to get this installed. And then to join these things together, since they're such odd angles, I'm going to be using pocket hole screws. I could use really about anything. I could use dowel rods, biscuits, however. I think this worked just fine. Now, for this front one, so make sure that my spacing and everything is where I want it. Then I'll cut a piece that will attach here and here. So let's cut it down to the width of the front board. Okay, so now this will fit right into this, spacing about where I want it. All right, so I'll make this cut. I'm going to put pocket holes on both sides of this, and we'll get this final wooden piece installed. All right, so check it out. Looking super cool. One final touch. I'm going to clean this band up. It's going to be like a decorative thing. Kind of put it back to where it was earlier. So I have to cut this band off in the back, and it'll give it a kind of super cool look like that. All right, so I'm going to actually sand this band and kind of bring out some of that old iron look and see what we can come up with. So we're sanding metal. Yep. And like everything else that we do, there's 100 different ways that you can do this. You can use flat discs, wire wheels, whatever that you would like. And you can bring it down to the patina that you want. Anytime I'm sanding or grinding rust, I like to throw on a little penetrating oil just to help break things up. All right, so now that I have my little rings cleaned up, I'm going to mark these so I can drill a hole for a screw. And since this is pretty much just for decoration, it's only going to need like 1 screw per leg. Now I'm just going to drill 3 holes in each one of these. We'll throw in our screws, put on a little finish, and this project's almost done. Now for our final step, let's just get these to where we're wanting them. I'm going to be using kind of a bronze screw, just kind of matches everything. Right, so check it out. Just need to add a coat of finish to this, and we are done. I've taken an old barrel that I picked up for around 10 bucks and made 2 side tables. And if the bottom of the barrel had been good, I would have been able to get 4 out of this. I love doing these types of videos where I have no clue how something's going to turn out. These types of builds are what make you grow as a woodworker. They're a challenge with constant issues that you have to figure out on the fly. So make sure to challenge yourself in your next project. But in order to even do that, you know what you have to do. Get up, get out, and get your make on. Imagine taking a pile of wood and turning it into something amazing. Now, imagine doing that without years of frustration. You do not need a fancy workshop, expensive tools, or years of experience. With Woodworking Kickstart, you'll build confidence and real skills in no time. So you can spend years making mistakes and learning the hard way like I did, or you can start building with confidence today. So join me in Woodworking Kickstart and let's get your journey started.